days in a row. Actually, this is kind of my one day off this week. Tomorrow I have to take our 16-and-a-half-year-old Molly on her final trip to the vet, and then Thursday afternoon is GP, and Friday's simple, vampire. But somehow this week got crushed together. Now, I need to try and get this set up here so if perchance somebody pops in to say hello, I'll watch my time too, because in Quotefac will be a little bit later. But anyway, on the way home, okay, here we go, I'm set up. Morning, Melanie. Morning, sis. How you two doing? On my way back from my appointment yesterday, it was just a regular follow-up, to have a little bit of an infection, but we're working on that. No biggie. I was thinking about something. I enjoyed coming on yesterday, and still, yeah, I don't know, I understand, but then I realized that Debbie's going to be on at 11, so if I'm going to sneak in this morning, I better move my booty and say something. And if this isn't for you, just skip over it. But I was just feeling like there's a lot of us that just need simple encouragement these days. To not let the hard days win. And one of my favorite new shirts that I got in May is, yes, Donnell, today is Tuesday, says, I'd rather hear about your battles than you lost the war. And I know sometimes it's hard when somebody has a lot of battles that continue to go on. And we talk about that, but we don't talk about the fact that sometimes we just get tired and quiet quitting. And quiet quitting is as dangerous as giving into the war completely. And there are days, let me tell you what, a couple weeks ago, my hip was at, a week and a half ago was at an 8.5 when I dragged myself into the doctor, and I have been talking to him about it for a year. And for 6 months I've been saying, what is this? This is a problem. And finally, he couldn't find it the Friday before, and on Friday he goes, oh, that big old thing is a muscle knot. And I thought it was a bone spur or something, because it was large, and it was hard. And he had felt it before, and I had talked to 5 other doctors, including 2 back specialists and the trauma surgeon that did my SI fusion. And it's like, oh, we need to work on this. Now, it's getting better, and what he did made it smaller, but it took 6 months. It shouldn't have taken 6 months. It shouldn't have been, when I asked my trauma surgeon, when I did my 4-month follow-up about 3 weeks ago, okay, you work with this SI area, you put these 3 fancy 3D custom printed titanium screws in my SI to fuse it. What is this? Well, he felt it and then changed the subject. Instead of going, I don't know. But the fact is not giving up. You just keep praying if you pray, and you keep plugging, and you hope that you're surrounded by good people like I am. I have a really good family here. uh, Donnell's fur dog is typing a message. Um, and I don't know where this is going, but let me tell you what, I'm here. And if you need to talk, even if it's something you've talked about 100 times before, and you need to go through your sock drawer, because some of us are verbal processors. I'm an extrovert over here, and I process verbally, and I may start out here in a conversation and end up getting answers, and then as I process through, it may sound to somebody kind of like a similar conversation, but each time uh, things are coming together and I'm getting answers. And sometimes things just don't go as planned. Morning, Cheryl. So, and we talk about things going on in the world, the political violence, whatever. There's a lot of us that are like, in our personal lives, there's enough to carry. Um, and for those who do believe, and I can't separate my beliefs from who I am because that's my strongest relationship. And that was the whole point. Christ did what he did was to restore a relationship with him. And you don't see an answer. Well, maybe it's just because you got an answer that was different than what you thought should be. But that doesn't necessarily mean it isn't the answer you need. And sometimes it's a harder answer. My sister has Lewy body dementia. My adopted sister. 40 years. I've taken care of her for 6.5 years. And for over a year, everybody said, oh, that's just the dementia. That as things escalate, just don't take it personal. And I kept going, something's not adding up here. And I got this yesterday. Well, that's what happens with the dementia. And it's like, no, there's a choice. I know when it's the dementia. I know when there's a choice of I'm going to use the ticket of this is a blank check. And I started working in 23 at setting up some better boundaries. And because God brought some people into my life this past year where I wasn't fighting so much on my own, I got stronger about setting up my boundaries. Well, that really pissed things off. And on August 5th, she was supposed to see her neurologist about getting her driving privileges back because she had gone in the hospital. They thought she had a stroke. Day and a half later, they said it wasn't a stroke, it was the dementia. She spent a week in bed, and she spent 2 months in rehab. And I thought there'd be finally some accountability and responsibility and some direction on how to take care of her. And instead, she dissed me 4 times. I don't care if she's here. To everybody she talked to, and then in the room, she just said, well, I asked, the nurse gave her a direct number so you wouldn't have to punch in 10 numbers to get to her, and she whipped it in her pocket. And I said, well, if her husband or I as her caregiver need that to get a hold of you for help, we ain't ever going to see that card. And the nurse says, well, I'll write out another one. And as she was handing it to me, Deb looked me straight in the eye and said, you're fired. I don't want you to be my caregiver anymore. And I looked at her and I did probably one of the most courageous things that I've done in a long time. And I said, well then, your husband can take you home. I can't fight the stories in your head. I can't fight the delusions. I can't fight the paranoia. I can't fight the choices in how you are using this as a blank check. And I said, I love you, but you don't need me, then that's fine. And I walked out. I talked to the nurse for a minute. I walked out. I sat in the car. I called her husband to make sure he was going to be there, because she didn't know he was coming, because she had asked him to take the day off so I wouldn't have to take her. She didn't tell me that was the reason. And he could only get half the day off, and he didn't tell her that he was on the way. But I called, and he says, I'm in the parking lot. I told him what happened, and I said, I'm leaving. You can take her home. And it was not the answer I wanted. It was not the breakthrough that I wanted, because at that point, basically, I was enemy of the state. But it was the answer I needed. See, God knew it was the answer I needed, because everything that I had been dealing with, the time and energy that I was putting into caring for her, and the advantages she was taking of that care, and the ignorance of my needs, you sometimes don't see. And again, I don't know where this is going, but I just think somebody needs to be encouraged today to not let the hard days win. I was so frustrated last week because I needed to make 3 bloomin' bowl koozies for my postal lady, and I've been able, last fall I could put 8 or 10 together in 2 hours, and it took me 4.5 hours to put 3 together and get them done. And it's like, and I've got a stack of things that I want to do, but I also have gone through quite a bit, and it took a little bit to get through. What happened the 5th of August? It's only been a month and a half, and I've been dealing with a very persistent hip, amongst other things, but I have to take it as a win. I got 3 bowl koozies done, and if I had been taking care of her, she would have darn tootin' made sure that I didn't get them done, because she would have come up with something that needed to be done. One step at a time, and I want to thank you guys, because I was sharing some things with you yesterday, and you guys reminded me I am blessed that God runs me into people where, like, I can get some of the feet I needed for my machine, and I had money squirreled away. I give away more than I am able to sell, but I had some money squirreled away with some things I sold, and it was enough to get the feet. Unfortunately, I still need a roller foot 72S for Bernina, and that's ouch. But sometimes we forget to look at the blessings that we do have. I wanted to, this is a North Carolina, South Carolina shop hop, 2 months, and this year, after 3 years of dedicated trying, I wanted to get to more than 2 shops. I particularly wanted to go down to South Carolina, because if you hit those 3 shops on the coast, not only would it be a nice day away, but you can also get an opportunity to win five full bolts of QT fabric. And those of you who know me, my favorite designer, my man Dan Morris and the Morris Creative Group are with QT. Had that set up for Labor Day, because Tony was all in to take me and go with me on the adventure, but then 2 of the shops were closed, and now I don't know if it's going to happen. And Sunday I found out that this is the last North Carolina, South Carolina. Next year they're splitting it up, and they're lumping us with Virginia, West Virginia, Tennessee, and somewhere else. And South Carolina goes with 3 or 4 other states. And I was like, really? But in the scheme of things, I'm still blessed. It's just a disappointment, and it will work out. And Henry and Henrietta are very, very happy. They spent the day yesterday with nobody bothering them. And Bubba here, old Bubba, he's not quite awake. I think he had a little too much moonshine last night when I was asleep taking my dog nap. He's sitting there. He has to find a place. I need to find a place on my shelf. Let me see who popped in here. Morning, KD. How are you doing this morning? Morning, Mary. It's good to see you. Cheryl. Um, so anyway, you know, we just keep, I think a year ago I could have just spun this all together and in a better cohesive way, but it's been another long year. Um, and last year this time I was just in the midst of finding my voice. I'm an old crippled fart, and because of my childhood, I never really had a voice. And steps started in 2019, and then 22, 2 weeks before my disastrous hip replacement surgery, and then in 23, and then big steps this year, and they all come together. And so I was finding balance last fall when I was first starting. Oh, here comes dementia, dog. I don't know how she gets her big old self up under that little space, pop out like a Pop-Tart. You have to find kind of balance. And that's not always easy, and I'm still working on that, you know. So, anyway, enough meandering and that kind of thing. Like I said, I just wanted to pop in and talk about that. We see a lot. I've seen a lot on YouTube of pop up of, don't give up, you know, and but they don't talk about the quiet quitting when you're frustrated and it doesn't seem like there's hope for a breakthrough, and this isn't going right and that's not going right, and you think, well, and that's a whole nother path that, I think is more hidden. But there are people out there that do love and care about you and that are there, and you can, I'm one of them. You want to talk to me anytime, day or night, you give me a DM, call me on Messenger. If I have a brain cell, I'll be there to listen, you know, um, and do the best I can. If I don't, I'll get back to you as soon as I'm able to. This month's been a little busy with doctor's appointments, and then I'll have to take care of the 16-and-a-half-year-old baby tomorrow. But next month will be easier. Morning, Giggles. How are you this morning? It's good to see people popping in. But we were talking about yesterday the pocket prayer thingy-madoos or reminders, and I showed you the fabric, and I found them baggy. It was behind me. But this is what I do. I take the material, and that's just a remnant, and I cut them into 2.5-inch squares like this, and use them as the back. So they come out, and by the time you get your little 1/4 inch, and you get it flipped right side out, and you get a lot of different, and these are just a few that are left over. I made a half a dozen, and they're now gone. And then a strip piece. I would take a strip, usually longer than this, but I've as you can see, I would take a scrap strip, 1.5 inch, put it together, sew it down, cut it into 2 1.5-inch pieces, put them together opposite. You have your front 4 patch. You can also do an hourglass. If you take 2 5-inch pieces and you mark it in the middle and then do a 1/4 inch on each side, then you get, and then you cut it. Then you get you get 4 hourglass designs for these. I tried to put up a picture, but half the pictures that I've downloaded from my thumbnails, they come up blank, and I have to figure out YouTube. But If you want the pattern, it's free from Shabby Fabrics. It's just a free one or two page download, and they show you how to do the 4-patch, and they show you how to do the hourglass. I just kind of tweaked it in that I don't do the little 1-inch squares one by one. I do a strip, cut them, put them together, and then put two together. Now, one thing I do, oh no. One thing that I do that they don't suggest is I put a little piece of lightweight interfacing on the back of the 4-patch or the hourglass on the front. Just iron it on. And the reason why I do that is when you slip that little metal cross in there and you're trying to sew around, it does get caught in the seams. And I have, broken a needle. But and out of that first experience, I thought, well, what if I put just a little piece of lightweight interfacing on the back of it, and that little cross slides all the way around in it so you can top stitch without any worry. And I stocked up on this because I don't know if brother sister is going somewhere. Oh, I have it. It's up there. And like I said, it's a simple thing you can do with scraps. If you have two 5-inch squares, put them together, and you sew them down the middle. I haven't made one in a while, but if my brain's working fine this morning, I'll just use this as an example. If you have two squares, you go corner to corner, go 1/4 inch, corner to corner, sew on either side, cut them like this. So you cut them on your lines, right? And then you cut them in half, and then you put the two pieces together, and you have the hourglass. Like I said, I used all the little extras that I had to show you examples of that. So, but like I said, Shabby Fabrics has a free pattern for that. And if you're gonna make a bunch, because they do, people, you can reach in your pocket and say, here, and bless somebody with it who's having a difficult day or looks like they might. Like I said, I don't fiddle with little 1-inch pieces, and I don't cut up my 5-inch square to make the hourglass. I do it as work smarter, not harder, is what I say. I did the same thing with the hearts. They have a free pattern for this. They call it a pocket prayer heart, but really you can use it for a lot of different things. And they come out like this. Now this one needs to be top stitched, and they have a little pocket in the back. And then you take some embroidery thread and you put a cross here typically after you top stitch it. See, I have 3 here ready to go that need top stitching. This one, anyway. So, and their idea at Shabby Fabrics is that you can put your little thoughts in there. But you can also use it as, like, put a gift card in there. Put a little note of encouragement in there. But what they did was they took 5-inch squares and cut out these 1.5-inch little dinky things and sewed them together. I knew I was going to end up making a bunch for a project. So what I did was I got some 6-inch strips of cave on sale, which meant I could cut out 4 strips, 4 1.5-inch strips. So I didn't realize that they're 6-inch strips. The motor had originally come up with were with the fabric. So I took about 12, cut them in half, cut them into 1-inch strips, and just started mixing and matching. And then I would sew 2 with 2 and add a 3rd one, add a 5th one. Yeah, I'll get it together this morning. I would put 2 strips with 2 strips and then add the 5th one to make my square and cut my heart from it. And what I ended up with was, I was hoping for 25, and I kind of overdid, which is not, you know, which is not unusual. This was 22 or 23. So I have these left. But the nice thing is I can pull these out and stitch in the ditch and make a batch of these to sell a giveaway in no time. And yeah, I ended up making like 75 of them. And part of that was I didn't realize that one set of 5 strips was going to make 12 to 13 5-piece strips that I put in a big pile and then just put two together, and added the 5th strip to make the square. And what I did was I took their heart pat, you know, and then, like I said, I just stitched down here in the ditch. I got everything ready. And then I take a piece of freezer paper. They have a heart template. I take the freezer paper, iron it on here, cut the heart out, and sew it to the back. This is just one bag. The backs are in another bag. But see, I'm not too worried about the fact, and I didn't like, okay, this was about 4 years ago, because I didn't like how wanky some of my squares were on my first batch. So I made a second batch so that they didn't look so scrappy, because I had some drunk sewing. So the second batch added a whole bunch, because I wanted them to look more even. And this is the fun of something like Cape. Some of these fabrics are from the same piece, but you wouldn't tell because you have them this small. But this was not. This didn't take forever because I wasn't doing, and yes, I could take these. I've had the suggestion. I could take them and put them together and use them for something else. I have done that with a few, but at the same time, I do like having some on hand. So when I want to make up a batch of 10 of them, it's not, good morning, June. It's not hard, because see here, here's all the pockets. They're folded, top stitched. And here are all backs. They're all cut. So all I have to do is grab a square, and when I have time and I'm bored, I will do the top stitching. So I have that ready. Then all I have to do is grab a square, cut out a heart, pick out a pocket, and what I did was I just got about 1/4 of a yard of a bunch or a couple of a bunch of different capes to keep the theme, and then I just found a bunch of solids. So then, and right now I have, oh, get over there, see? They're slip sliding all over the place. But see, here's how the strips came out. They're just strips like this. Put 2 together, put 2 more together, add a 3rd one. I was looking in here because this is the bag that, but since these are all ready, if I just need a little something to put up or to give out, I can go in this little bag, and or if I just need a palette cleanser, you know, I'm in one of those funks. But this is what it looks like. I just go and stitch in the ditch, and you can see here I didn't get very straight, but I will have scraps left over, because you see the heart doesn't take the whole, so I can put it down here, and put it over here, and put it up here, and put it here, so I can get whatever design that's my fancy that day. I need to work on some more of these. So anyway, That's a free pattern um, from Shabby Fabrics. And I just tweaked it and ended up, I have put together probably 50 of these since I put, and I probably have about 40 or 50 left. We're just not going to go there. Um, but it's nice because some days I don't feel like cutting. Some days I don't have time. But I can grab one. I have a stack of these project bags, and I can grab a project bag, um, you know, and pull something together. Look, there's chickens in here. These are grocery bag holders. I have legs. I have purple and blue wings and bodies. Most of the wings and the legs and stuff are stuffed. I will get to put them together, and I think there's 3 or 4 of them I got interrupted with other projects. I'm going to work on these soon. I go get some blocks done. These are Christmas trees, and I'm so thankful that most of them are just ready to put together and stuff. And yes, I need to continue to organize. These are just simple, and I meant to have more done. See? They're little fabric Christmas trees. And I did not realize till I was organizing a few months ago that I had so many, like this one. Just needs to be sewn down the middle, stuffed, and then have it. And I have 2 sizes. This was also a free pattern. I did the little itty bitty ones. And then I did the medium. I did not do the large or the extra large because I thought these were a nice size. Now, this year did not go as planned with surgery and breaking my back, and my, I fractured the wing of my L3. I think that was 2.5 months ago accidentally. I'm glad I have this because coming up I'm going to be able to do this. I've got to. But see, I just have a whole bunch I just took a bunch of different little pieces. I've got some. I thought these looked like they had Christmas lights on them. I tried to get some more of this because I only had a small amount and they didn't make it anymore. And now they ain't there. This is fancy. This is a Donnell thing. And I have the white. I have it in the white. But see, these are all sewn and ready. These are all sewn and ready to tack together. And I have a few in here, blue lights and a few others in here that I have cut and didn't finish sewing. I just didn't realize that I had so many ready. Now, and I can look up and see who I got the free pattern from. This was probably 3 or 4 years ago. I know it's still out there. But basically you cut 4 pieces of fabric, you sew them together, you turn them out, you put them together, mark one of them down the middle, you put them together, you sew down the middle, and you stuff them. Now, I will tell you, if you're going to try something like this, or you try, thank you very much, June, if you're going to try this, what they told me at first to do was to stuff this whole side, and then stuff this side, then stuff this side and this side. These 2 stuff easily. This side gets hard, this side gets almost impossible, especially on the small one. So what I did after I did the first couple and almost pulled out what little hair I have left, I found that if I stuffed this top, this, then did the next section all the way around, it looked nicer. Then I evolved it from that. I take a little bit of stuffing and stuff it in the tip. You see just a little bit here. I stuff a little stuffing in my tips here to get it down in the tips before it's sewn together. I put just a teeny tiny bit of stuffing up here. and a little bit in just the tips here. And then I sew down the middle. I've just found that it makes it easier. The only other tip I can give you is if you want to try something like this, to avoid blowouts here in the stress points, where set your stitch size small. I did not know this at first, and I had problems, and I ran across a random video where someone was sewing gnome stuffies together, and they said when I sew curves, I set my stitch down to like a 2 because it holds it together tighter, and so when I turn it out, I don't have areas where I have to go back and re-sew or fix. Game changer. Just a tip, because once I started using the much tighter sewing around the curves and in these little bites here, when I turned it out, I didn't have these little holes and what I call blowouts showing up. I use it on my bowl koozies. I use it on all, that's something that I've carried over. And that's the thing, if you find a tip that works, cross it over onto your other projects. She was doing stuffies, and I started using it on my bowl koozies, and then I went to Christmas trees. Like another tip I can give you is when you're going to go to turn something like this out, most people leave the little window open and just sticking out like that, because this one's come out. That's what I clip it down a 1/4 inch. I fold it down. I fold it like this because it's inside out. Iron it down good. And when I turn it, I have less tearing here. And I have a cleaner edge when I get it turned right side out. And I will do that with anything that I have to turn. Now, I may have to futz and adjust my edge or opening once I get it turned out. But you see, you're not turning against the raw edge. You're turning it right side out against this edge. And by back tacking here, and what I do is I sew right up. Okay, I sew like 3 stitches, back stitch, sew that 1/4 inch, sew back, and go around, come to where my other end of my opening is, back stitch 3 or 4 stitches, go all the way up to the edge, back stitch, and out. And that way, when I get to that point, I will clip, I'll use this, I will clip right next to this 1/4 inch on each side, and then I will fold down my seam and then I turn it right side out. I have less tearing here. I have a neater seam when I get done. That's free tip Tuesday. It may or may not work for you, but it's habit now. And I just found that it makes it easier. As you see, I haven't done much with this. I pre-folded this, and what I did was I cut a little of the bulk out before I turned it right side out. Made it easier to turn out. Kept this cleaner. You're often going to have a little bit of there. You can fix that. You really can. Sometimes you have to re-sew it, but sometimes you just stick a little bit of that magic fabric glue in there and it takes care of it. And what I mean by reducing bulk is, okay, so here's, I don't know what I did. Okay, I threw this here. Look at this. Before I turn this right side out, when I clip this seam, I clip the batting out of this 1/4 inch area on both sides to reduce the bulk and make it easier to get a nice seam. I didn't go kamikaze. I just took a little bit of the batting where it comes together here just to make it a little easier. And I can tuck this in. Now this one needs fixing because for some reason my stitching wasn't working correct, so I have to turn this right side out again. I mean, inside out again. Leanna, oh, I'm doing pretty good this morning. Hetty pop up. Hey Hetty, how you doing? Hi Joe. Joe, Henrietta, and Henry are very happy. I was gone, so they got to spend the afternoon together, and then I didn't sew. I didn't get to sew last night because I was taking care of other things. And Bubba here, you know, last night when I was taking my dog nap, Bubba got into the moonshine, so he's a little bit this morning, but he'll be all right. He'll be all right. He goes, I got pins stuck in my head. I had to do something for my headache, and I'm like, you know, come on now. I know you're in the South. So anyway, this one needs to be turned, and I need to pull half the stitching out. I was in a hurry. I wanted to get it done, and my thing said that I had a problem with my thread, had snapped or something, and it's like my thread didn't snap. And I was stubborn, and I got part way around, and then I thought, I need to rethread this thing, and I thought, well, it'll be okay. And you see, after I rethreaded it, this whole 3/4 is fine, but this part where I didn't get away with it. And I thought I should have just stopped. Should have just done it. Thank you, Leanna. Henry, I won Henry from Joe, my dear friend Joe, over a year ago. And I've been teasing her that Henry's been lonely for his girlfriend. Well, I didn't realize that Henry already had a girlfriend named Henrietta, and they had just gotten separated. So when she did her little auction to help the rescue, I just had to bring Henrietta home. So I got Henrietta, and they're very happy. And then she brought out Bubba, and Bubba just looked like he really needed a good southern home. So Bubba came home. And yes, I could have made Henry a girlfriend, but because Vintage Joe has a very good tutorial on this, and yes, I have the material. I have a whole little bucket full of stuff to make these, and I've had it for 3 or 4 years because I collected stuff. I have enough but I hadn't gotten around to it, and I felt like Bubba was waiting for somebody special, and then I find out that they originally were together and they got separated, and so they're having a little reunion. Yes, I know, I'm a little bit cray. No worries, Joe. We'll get Bubba a girlfriend soon. He'll be all right. It happens. It happens. He's just so cute. Poor guy's got I got pins stuck in my head. And hi Michelle. Good morning. Leon, I'm glad that you popped on. Doing pretty good. The hip right that side's not too happy with me this morning, but we're gonna make the best of it. And like I said, I just felt like popping on because I need to get a little bit more regular at this. And now, because everything blew up in my life in August, I will have time to do that, hopefully. And I'm glad that your mom made it to the early errands, and I'm sorry that your cold keeps hanging on. It seems like this crud just keeps going. Thank you, Joe, for throwing up a link. Yeah, there's some, Doug, the Pug Mama Quilter, Hetty was on here. She popped in Slick Stitches, SCHLICK Stitches. She makes patterns, writes patterns. She creates designs, patterns. They are the bomb. Okay, she's just pulling it together to get them out there. But she has a channel called Slick Stitches. If you're interested in some really cool new ideas for quilt designs, really cool lady, Canadian, um, my sis, go check out her channel. Um, and Leanna, she has the Pastry Queen Farm Adventures. It's often a riot to go on her channel, especially when she does a morning live, because she does trivia. I think she's still doing it. I've been a bad girl because I've just been lurking lately, but um, it's fun. We've got Deb Bass in here. There are so many. Katie Crafts is a really good one. I can't remember about Melanie. Donnell Stitchery, in Quilt Fact. Mona does what? The Aqua Quilter, Lisa. These are good people. They're not the quilt police. And they have built, God has given and built a good community with them. In fact, a lot of us already kind of cross. We just bounce between these because they're, okay, I have nothing wrong with someone who has hit the YouTube big time because I learned from them. But a lot of times they have a more polished approach and they have all the equipment. They're not like me. And you don't see as many of their mistakes and their oops. And I like the authenticity, and there's some great communities. And let's face it, we need community right now. We really do. Kind of almost in a way we've never needed it as a society, and I'm not just talking about the United States as a whole. We need good community. We need good folks. And I tell you what, there's good folks in these groups. Is everybody going to be your jam? Nah. But you're going to find some booze it doesn't take a lot. But enough said. Yeah, Joe, they's happy. As long as they don't start making scraps for me, we'll be alright. Thank you for putting up some links for me, Joe. Yeah, Hetty can do custom designs too. Like if you need, she did this beautiful custom design I saw a beautiful custom design she did for this lady. And if you're stuck and you need a tweak on a pattern, you got an idea and you're stuck. This woman, I tell you what, check out Slick Stitches and yeah. Yeah, you do, Joe, but I tell you what, you're a real good friend. And I tell you what, I have spent most of my life carrying and pushing through a lot of what I've gone through by myself. And this goes back to from the day I was born. My dad was busy finishing up his Air Force career, and then he went to seminary at night for 4 years. So when I was in the hospital, my mom couldn't. She made up all kinds of excuses. So 97% of the time, she wouldn't come to the hospital when I was going to post orthopedic surgery or getting cast change or whatever. 3 surgeries in a year and a non-walking plaster body cast for a year between 14 and 24 months. And this year in particular, God's brought different people along to help support and get through. Don't get me wrong. But this year in particular, I found some really good community and some really good booze, which really have helped me because I can tell you since mid 2018, these have been some of the toughest years, and some of it has been dealing with Deb, and some of it's just life, and some of it is the onion that I inherited from my childhood has more layers than I thought it did. And we keep working on it, and I will till the day I take my last breath. Um, but that's who I am, and my father, who raised me when my mother abdicated that role, um, he was a flawed man, but he was the same way. He was a little bit, I'm gonna figure this out, and I'm gonna keep fighting. I'm not gonna, as much as I can with God's help, to get through. So anyway, we're getting sidetracked again. Yes, Leanna, I was 14 months old when I had my first hip surgery, and they decided to put me in a plaster non-walking body cast for a year. And 5 months in, they realized that they had fractured my femur, and they said, oh, it'll heal by the time you get. And I regularly had to go in, and they had to knock me out to change the cast because it started here and went all the way down, and it went down past my knee on my left leg and all the way down my right leg with a bar across, and it didn't heal. So at probably about 25 months or so, they had to go in and clean everything up and put a steel plate in. Well, the problem was when I was about 3.5 or so, that steel plate started pulling the bone apart and tearing crap up because I was going. So they had to go in and clean it all up and take the plate out. And that was before I was 5. So I started this journey with this hip 50, no, almost 60 years ago. And it's this hip that gives me trouble. Still. And my mother, you know, I can honestly say I now know my mother was a covert narcissist. She didn't want to deal with, and I was her second scapegoat. And my siblings, I have 4 siblings, 3 that were just raised to be toxic, and 1 that's half safe because he wants to get close to these 3 because they've made something in their life. They've got millions and houses and cars, and then there's Joe. You know, I lost my leg 24 and a half years ago to medical malpractice. In 3.5 months, about 3.5 months, the best knee surgeon that I was supposed to trust here, might have been 4, destroyed my knee over a grade 1 meniscal tear. It should have been an arthroscopic procedure with a 6 to 8 week recovery. I did 5 surgeries at a major medical center called Duke, about 4 hours away. At which point they said, there's nothing left of your knee structure. You can either, and you've got permanent nerve damage from the mid-knee down, so you can drag a dead leg around with a non-functioning knee or amputate. So we amputated. And part of the reason why I've had a handful of the 11 surgeries in the last 5 years is because I've been a crutch user, and I'm getting to be an old fart. And but it's kind of amazing because I never thought I would see 20, let alone 25, let alone 60. And in December, I'll be 61. It's kind of a miracle in and of itself. And see, that's part of what started it too. I was 2.5 weeks late, so I was born on the 23rd of December, and in those days you didn't pop out a baby and go home. You stayed in the hospital. And that messed up my mom's plans for a family Christmas. And just became her scapegoat, and I was the truth teller. And what I know now in putting pieces together is a parent that has something really to hide from the public. They figure out the truth teller before the truth teller figures out who they are. And um, I also, from my father, no, sorry, my phone was trying to ask me if I wanted to answer this phone call. I don't. So, yeah, and yeah, I'm sorry to hear that, um, Leanna. You know, in 65, if they would have had a CT scan, it would make a difference. And here's the thing, you know, my mother took thalidomide. And for you that don't know what thalidomide was, is it was a drug I think created for malaria or whatever. And they found out that it worked wonderfully for helping with severe nausea and vomiting in pregnant women. Miracle. But what their testing didn't show was what it did to the fetuses. And the main effect that was noticeable was the limbs. They were called flipper babies because they were often no limbs, short limbs, could be one or all four. What they didn't realize till later was it also severely affected a lot of the children's reproductive organs, as well as some of their great vessels like the SMA. I now sport a stent in my SMA, and I never was able to have children. My mother hid this fact. And 3 days after she passed away in 2020, my sister went, and I'm standing in Mom's bedroom. She walked by and goes, "Oh, by the way, you know your mom took that medicine, and that's why you had the problem." Um, my leg was 2.5 inch. My right leg was 2.5 inch shorter than my left leg. I wore a lift until I was 13 and a half. So you can imagine the bullying from that. Um, being a PK, being smart, and having a lift, not a good combination for school, and not having anybody that could really back you up is another thing. But if they, you know, it wasn't even my mother that said anything. It was my grandmother. We came back from Germany. I was born in Germany. I was 11 months old. We came back. My dad was visiting his mother in Oklahoma, and she was in the kitchen, and I was down the hall, and she heard this thump, 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 and it bugged her. And she came in, and she noticed that my left foot was hitting the table, and my right foot was swinging clear. And she noticed that the chair I was sitting in was even, and she took my father aside and said, "Get your daughter medical care now." And that's how he ended up at Walter Reed. Was he was planning on staying in Oklahoma or Texas to finish out his last 4 years in the Air Force, but he got a compassionate transfer that took him to Andrews in Maryland. So I could get care at Walter Reed, which at the time was a top orthopedic hospital in the United States. And because of that, see, he hated accounting. I think he would have stayed in the military longer if they had let him be something other than an accountant. And he figured, well, I'm in Maryland, I'll go to seminary. And he retired and was ordained right about the same time. And he took his first church when I was 6 in southern Maryland. So, yeah. And the manse, or the house we lived in, was across a parking lot from the church, and behind the house was the large parish hall and a big gravel in a one-road town. You know, you had Main Street and the light and a few businesses. It was definition of small town, which didn't make my mother happy either. But yeah, my mother very carefully, I mean, she even destroyed medical records that I left her when I was 18 and left home. She promised to care for my x-ray packet from Walter Reed and my big fat file. And when I called her 2 years later because I needed it, she goes, I don't know what happened to that. Now, when she died, I had to go through her file cabinet looking for something for the for my siblings, and I found medical records, complete medical records going back to the birth of my oops brother, who's almost 10 years younger than I am, 74. But all my records weren't there. But she had every other medical record going back to 74. So yeah, she couldn't. Truth came out, and the thing is here's the scary thing is they've done research, and they found out it took one dose. They found out that 90% of the babies were stillborn or died within a week. 90%. And then they found out, I think in 2018, it was one ingredient that impacted the growth, and it took them 8 years to pull it from the market. So I was right at the tail end. I was right but it started in Germany. It was created in Germany, and it was over the counter as well as medical. And I know full well that my mother took it in good faith, and I know that the American doctor at the military base gave it to her in good faith. But she couldn't accept that, and she took it out on me. I am a poster for childhood traumatic events. But I'm also a poster child of resilience, because they're figuring out why only about 20% of children that go through severe childhood traumatic events become resilient. And I will tell you every day, all day long, that one of the biggest factors in my life was God. I know him personally, and I know the reality of how he gets me through every day. Thank you, Hetty. I appreciate that. Lisa. Yeah, I understand, Lisa. You gotta work. I appreciate you. I appreciate you popping in. That's awesome that he went into Broadway. Leanna. Thank you very much, Leanna. I appreciate it, Leanna, because some days I want to quiet quit. But then God sends me somebody, or there's a situation, and it gives me enough to get to the next point. Excuse me. And to keep going. And I have seen people that quit. My sister had her back started acting up bad when she was in the hospital. She was determined that it was this problem that the spine surgeon and the orthopedist at the hospital said it wasn't, that her GP said it wasn't, because then they could go in and surgically fix it and everything would be 100% magically better. Well, we got her into the spine surgeon, and he says there's nothing I can magically fix. But the guy who's working on you is doing amazing things, and he's got like 10 other things on his list to do, and the first thing I want to do is tell him to work on this vertebrae right here, because I think it'll help you. And she quit. And she spends a lot of time in her head alone in that chair, and it breaks my heart, and there's nothing I can do about it. Those are choices that we make. And I tell you what, with this hip, there have been a few times, because when I had that hip replacement, and that anesthesiologist had the anesthesia too light, they broke my femoral neck and forgot to tell me. It was supposed to be an hour, it took 4. They had no pain management on board when I came to 100% alert. As I was being wheeled out of the OR after 4 hours of doing horrendous things and breaking my femur. And they said there was a 95% sure this will cure your pain. It was a successful failure. I needed that new hip. because nobody caught in 3 to 4 years that it was fully dislocated, and that's what was destroying this part of my back. Was that it was? It just blows my mind. Plain film, ultrasound, MRIs, CT scans. Even the guy who was a trauma surgeon for 10 years and spent 10 years doing nothing but hip and pelvis, took me 3 years to find him to work on the hip, and he works on hips like mine. Didn't catch that it was fully dislocated, and that was part of the reason why I was having so much problem. 95% didn't happen. Put a stimulator in, and I had one beautiful month last September. I did something I thought I'd never do. Something I hadn't done in 25 years. I took a road trip by myself. 10 hours to Chattanooga. 5 days. Rode around. Amazing. I had a month like that. And then all of a sudden, my SI went, I hate you. Seized everything up and shot pain into my hip again. I'm very thankful for the stimulator because I have problems with my 3 of my toes being numb because of the nerves in my L5 and sacral bone being squished. And I have problems with my bladder, and it does help that. But it stopped. I don't know. I'm hoping that I don't get lost in the bureaucratic stuff of, well, let's see how this works. And then it's January before I see him again to get to the next step. I actually wrote him yesterday about that and said, listen, that knot is 70% smaller, but it still hurts like a son of a gun, and it's still shooting pain. Should we continue to work on it to see it gone as much as possible? Because the holidays are coming up. See, I've been doing this a long time. I was a CNA and an EMT. I had plans. I spent 10 years as a missionary. Saved my life. From 19 to almost the time I was 30. That's how I fixed a lot of things in my life. And I just started, late bloomer, just started figuring things out and building a life, and I lost my life. And here I am. Some days I'm ready for my ticket. But God says no. So I will bug you good people. I will get out my Auntie Patricia glasses, and we will have a good day. I love these glasses. I don't know why she put these in a, they're with my flashing boop, and my snowflake over here. I got my bunnies over there. Maybe this is part of the whole reason why I never grew up, and I've got a strange sense of humor. And I have accomplished quite a bit. And I'm very blessed. About a year or so ago, I apologize. It took me 18 years to find a pain management doctor that actually did pain management. And I told him about a year and a half ago, I'm sorry that I'm one of your successful failures. And he turned his chair around and looked at me with his eyes wide, and he goes, well, what do you mean? And I said, most people, you're really good at fixing up and getting on a path and putting them back together again. And I said, and then you get me, your favorite largest square peg, like you said, who's non-textbook. And I said, so I'm kind of your successful failure. And he says, no. He says, you're my inspiration. He says, because you go out, you do all these things, you come in limped and busted up, and you find a solution, and then you go out and you live. And he says, most of my patients, they don't do much at all anymore. And I said, I can't do that because I lose that. Good morning, Brock. I'm glad that you could join us. I love you guys, I tell you what. Leanna, I understand it. It didn't have to, there are genetic factors, and I can tell you, growing up, I wondered, because there was no evidence of this in the family line of congenital birth defects. And I can tell you, at 3 years old, my doctor looking at me and going, "You're very, very lucky. You should have been, you were right on the curve of the mountain. You shouldn't have had a leg at all. You're very lucky." And I didn't understand what he meant. I didn't understand why I had tons of hand x-rays in my packet, because I used to hold them up to the light because I thought x-rays were really cool to look at. And I had a packet by the time I was 5 years old. And then all of a sudden it dawned on me a couple years ago, they took them because my hands have a noticeable size difference. I mean, a lot of us have a little size difference in our hands, but when I put my hands together, they are noticeably different. I sucked my left thumb when I was a child because it was comfortable and it fit. Now I realize that they were checking my hands, but nobody realized what it did to the rest. What gets me, I was more angry when I found out at my sister for keeping the secret than my mother, because I understood that she just never had been able to cope or deal with anything in her life. And part of that was because even if the truth came out earlier, it would have helped me medically. But it also might have been messy, but I could have at least told my mother, "Hey, you did it in good faith. I don't hold it against you." And there would have been some hope in her latter years of at least a little bit of peace. But that was taken away from her, not just by decisions she made, but by decisions of my codependent sister, who's as much a covert narcissist as she was. And still is. I mean, oh my gosh. But, I know, look, I got the balding gene. None of my brothers, I have a brother who's 9 years older, a sister who's 8 years older, and a brother who's 4 years older. They have the receding hairline, but they're not bald. If I brush my hair back, I am bald. I have several factors. I have a dead thyroid. I have had trauma in the last few years because it got really bad in 2019. I lost it. But I also have the baldness gene. My grandfather wasn't bald. Neither of them. Must be a recessive gene. Yay me. One day I may shave my head and come on and go like this and go, something new. Even I should do it together and come on and just surprise everybody. But anyway, I'm going to get off of here because in about an hour, Miss Debbie's going to come on and Quilt Fact. Thank you, Leanna. You have a good day. And sometimes I feel like I paid my dues, but apparently there's still lessons to learn. And I'll tell you what, if I could turn back the clock to when I should have died twice in 2018, from May to November, and all the stuff I've gone through with my adopted sister, who now has chosen pretty much to hate me. Surgeries. I'm getting ready to put down my 5th dog since 2019. I've buried 19 people, including my adopted Nana. I wouldn't change it. And here's the thing, and I heard it beautifully put the other day. It's part of your story. It doesn't have to be the only story. I don't even say it as well as this person. I probably should go back and memorize it. I have a near photographic memory, and sometimes it fails me. But basically, that's what I'm learning, is this is part of my story. This is part of what made me who I am. Part of the reason why I'm a little bit crazy with a dark sense of humor. and what I'm still growing out of and healing, and trying to encourage you guys in the process not to give up, because life sometimes is hard, and it's harder for some people than other people. But I wouldn't change it if I could, because there are intangible, untangible things that I have gained from it that I would not have gained any other way. God has turned what the enemy meant for evil. I got a fly here. I'm not just, there's a gnat here. I'm not just like losing my, there is a gnat bugging me. But literally, God does turn what the enemy means for evil for good. And I have my pity parties. I'm not happy that I can't do my shop hop. I'm not happy that I got these great rulers to play with for my machine and I can't use them because I need a $140 foot. And it's like, you know, I have been practicing. Don't laugh at my free motion. I made crab. Hey, 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 hey. It's just dementia, dog. Everybody's in a small place, okay? We got everybody here. She can't get. I made a crab. And a flower. These are fun because I just played. I made an ugly octopus. And so now I have feet, so I can even do more playing and more working. And we won't look at that. These are some of my practice sheets here. I made a flower. I don't think that's too bad. Freehand, so I'm working on that. Mona! Hi, Mona. And now I've got a really nice ruler set from a friend, and then I got a Bernina ruler set, and I was like, Lord, I want to play. But then I also want to go on road trips and do this shop hop, and instead, you know, last year, let's see, in 23 I was set up to do it, and I had to have my neck fixed in September. Herniated disc that they figured out in surgery had ruptured. Oops. And last year something happened. I don't remember what it was. 23 was really a barn burner, dumpster fire. So this year I thought was going to be the year, and then I thought, oh well, I got next year. Well, next year they're changing everything, but we'll see what happens. You know, keep praying and keep working on things. What, whiner? Well, you know what? You guys just have taken over. Sorry. Moji wants to say hello. I got Mocha in my chair pushing me out. Munchie's down there. Dementia dog, the border collie Megs, Molly, who's 16 and a half, who I'm going to take in tomorrow, is over there because she can't get into her favorite hidey hole because these two boys were in the way. Thank you. And Hope, I don't know where the bass hole is, but she can stay in there. And mine, you're going to be 7 soon, aren't you? You guys aren't supposed to grow old. Oh, got a jealous one here. This little thing, the smallest one of my little baby here, my Velcro dog, it can push me out of this chair in a heartbeat. And let me tell you what. I don't know what I'd do without my children. And I know that my nephew, Molly, belongs to Deb's youngest grandson. She's always lived here. I've always taken care of her. Because he couldn't have her at home, and he talked JoJo into it. 8-year-old has a lot of power. And of course, his grandmother, Dee Dee, said on that Sunday, well, when we get to the house, if JoJo says it's okay, we'll go get this puppy. It's my honor and my privilege. It is heartbreaking. It is difficult. But it is the most loving thing that I will be able to do for Molly, is to tell her that it's okay. And she'll get to go have a party because she'll get to see Maggie and Minnie and, Micro and Gigi and Hawk. It's going to be a big party tomorrow for her. And I put it off. She still has it okay. I didn't let her suffer, but I put it off hoping that God would just have mercy and she'd grow up in her favorite spot and know that it was okay. But, of course, I've got dogs that are too stubborn to do that. And it's not quite as hard as Huck because we went in thinking Huck had an infection and not invasive cancer at 6 years old. And that we would take him and not be with him. Then it'd be just me and my 3 boys and an occasional visit from the bass hole. The petite basset that belongs to Deb, and it's the bane of my life sometimes. She's beautiful. She's not as quintessential basset as Huck was, and I really miss his lazy 65-pound butt. So anyway, I'm going to go. And thank you, Joe. Yeah, I love my dachshunds. And I know I've probably said this before, but this fella and this fella, these are purebred. These are pure brothers. They are literally actually brothers. They were born by the same, same mother, same father, a year apart. And he's not quite a short hair, but he has this deformed paw. And so we rescued him. We rescued him. I fought for him for about 3 months to get him to come home with us because the breeder wasn't going to sell him, but she wasn't going to treat him either. She was just going to let him suffer. And because she knew how we took care of Moji here, she let us have him finally. And he's become my Velcro dog. And when we got him, his thumb was like that long. And it kept catching on things. And I finally was able to get him into Doc, my longtime vet, excuse me. And first thing she said was and he would stand with his paw like this. And she said, first thing we need to do is get the thumb. And she said, I'd like to save the leg for balance and help his other leg last longer with less arthritis. So we had him neutered and we had the thumb removed. And he went from standing like with his paw like this to more like this. And he'll limp on it a little bit and he'll balance. But when he runs on 3 legs and he can run. His favorite buddy was Huck, and he as a pup. So you had this little tiny dachshund with this funky paw, and this big old 8-month-old 45, 50-pound basset hound. And they would wrestle, and yeah, he had a hard time adjusting when Huck left us, and I guess that was just March. I was about 2 to 3 weeks out from shoulder surgery because I was still in my chair. I guess that was March. He had a hard time adjusting. And Munchie's down here. They have all these little nooks around here. And they have places where they have taken over fabric, and I need to steal it back and wash it. Well, Mona, I think you got the right idea. Giant donut sounds good to me. It's my day off. Maybe I'll run 10 minutes down the road and get a giant apple fritter, because I'll tell you what, there's this little hole in the wall place, North Chase, which is close to Murrayville, about 10 minutes from here. Makes the best apple fritters. And apple fritters are not easy to get right. And they're like, literally like this big, and they're floopy, and it's like $3.33. And they make them fresh every day. I probably won't go out today because tomorrow I have, it's an hour to my vet now, hour and 15 minutes and an hour back, so. But yeah, now Mona's got me hungry for an apple fritter. I like donuts, don't get me wrong, but apple fritters, if they're done right, and there's only a couple places around here that I know do them right. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Hi, hi Loretta. Bye Loretta. Um, yeah. Um, and I did not. Oh, I started the M's because my first, we got a basset hound, and then 2 years later, I rescued a long-haired dachshund that was about 6 months old, and he stayed with me for a little over 15 years. His name was Micro. So we started with the M's, and we went from Micro to Mini, and now we're down to Munchie, Moji, Mocha, and Molly because Maggie's gone. And I don't know how we started with the H's with Huck because Bastion, our first basset hound, we called him Bastion, but his official name, to be haughty, was for the AKC was Sebastian Puddlesby Jennings III, and he went by Bastion. I think we couldn't really find a good B name after that, so we went with Huckleberry Hound. And then she was like, well, we need an H. We don't need another M. And it does get crazy sometimes, especially when you have three dark colored dogs, two of them small, going through whatever your name is. And she was going to name Hope it was like, the name she was coming up with is like, this just doesn't sound right. So about 11 o'clock the day we got Hope, and that was a miracle. I'll tell you that story sometime. That was just God put that all together that we even got Hope. And I walked down the hall and I said, how about Hope? And she goes, I like that. She says, yes. So Hope was named, and I walked back down the hall and I said, good, because I can stand in the middle of the hall and go, I need Hope. I've lost Hope. Where is my Hope? Of course, I didn't know that we were getting a petite basset hound that would be our third and our first true Basset. But, you know. Katie, yeah, I know. They just, it's, it's an art form almost to get them just kind of crispy on the out, get the crust right where it's not hard and it's floofy in the middle and nice and floofy with, but yeah, it's, there is a bakery in town, has been here, let's see, I got here in 93. It was here 10 years or longer, won awards, and the apple fritters are now, they make some other stuff that'll knock your socks off. When I used to be able to eat eclairs, their eclairs are second to none. They make fantastic cheesecake and their pecan rings. There are things that they make that are amazing. But their apple fritters, no. For an award-winning bakery that's been there 40, 50 years, no. Little mom and pop place that opened up a couple years ago, and I'll tell you what they do. They make these donuts, and they cut them in half, and they put jam in them, and they make this black raspberry, and they put that black raspberry jam in there, and they make it with powdered sugar, and they make it with granulated sugar. I like the granulated sugar. Simple, good, like the donut. So yeah. I've made apple fritters. It's just been a long while. So anyway, I definitely, it's 10:22. I need to get off here. I love you guys. Thank you for putting up with me, for your patience with me, for hanging with my channel, and my absences, and my trying to figure it out, and trying to make time. I know I have tutorials to make. I got, I got one project that I have to get done and get out in the mail in the next 2 or 3 days. And that's today's goal, is to get a chunk of that done. I have to get 20 or 21 blocks done. And it hasn't all been just my procrastination. Some of it has. Um, yeah, I'm hoping that I'll have some cooperation from my body and actually get some things done faster than I have been lately. Um, the Kenalog shot and my arse from my rheumatologist really helped my hands quite a bit. So they're doing a little better today. I did that Thursday. Um, I got this new OA treatment. It's not new to Europe, but it's new to us last October. And it's like I got my hands back. But then I noticed about a month ago that this hand particularly, I was losing my dexterity and it was starting to swell. I didn't have as much pain in my knuckles, and I thought maybe I'd have to repeat the treatment. But when I was in there, I said, listen, can you just give me one of those shots in the arse and see if it helps with the inflammation? It might be stress. And that, almost back to normal. I have better dexterity, so hopefully I can get things done faster, because, see, I have psoriatic arthritis and I have osteoarthritis. And one, osteoarthritis is degenerative and it's considered non-inflammatory, and so psoriatic arthritis is considered inflammatory, and I take a biologic shot every other week for that here. I do it myself. But every once in a while, when everything flares, it's like a party in my body that's like, we hate you. Um, but I hope you have a good day, Bronca. Auntie Patricia, thank you, Giggles. You guys have a blessed day. I'll get on and meander around again soon. I love you guys, and you take care. Uh-oh, wait a minute. What did I do? Uh-oh, sorry about that. Fat fingers, yes.